House of Representatives impeachment inquiry. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare a recess of the committee at any time. There is a quorum present. We will proceed today in the same fashion as our other hearings. I will make an opening statement, then the ranking member, Mr. Nunes, will have an opportunity to make a statement. Then we will turn to our witnesses for their opening statements if they should choose to make one. For audience members, we welcome you and respect your interest in being here. In turn, we ask for your respect as we proceed with this hearing. As chairman, I'll make any necessary or take any necessary appropriate steps to maintain order and ensure that the committee is run in accordance with House rules and House Resolution 660. With that, I now recognize myself to give an opening statement in the impeachment inquiry into Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States. This afternoon, the American people will hear from two witnesses who are both veteran national security professionals, one at the Department of State and the other at the Defense Department. David Hale is the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, the third most senior official in the department and the most senior Foreign Service officer. Laura Cooper serves as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Russia, Ukraine, Eurasia, and is responsible for a broad range of countries in the former Soviet Union and the Balkans. Between them, they have several decades of national security experience serving both Republican and Democratic presidents. And as we have heard from other dedicated public servants like former Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State George Kent, Ambassador Bill Taylor, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, and Jennifer Williams, their only priority has been the security of the United States. Undersecretary Hale was witness to the smear campaign against the Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, and the efforts by some in the State Department to help her. In late March, Yovanovitch reached out to Hale for assistance, telling him in an email that the tempo of social media and other criticisms of her were such that she felt she could no longer function unless there was a strong statement of defense of her from the State Department. Hale pushed to get the State Department to put out a robust, full-page statement of defense and praise for Ambassador Yovanovitch, sadly to no avail. That silence continues to today. In late April, we heard in riveting testimony last Friday from Ambassador Yovanovitch. She was recalled to Washington and informed that she had lost the confidence of the President. The Secretary of State did not meet with her. His subordinates dealt with her instead. With the departure of Yovanovitch, Hale watched as three new players moved in to assume a prominent role in Trump's Ukraine policy. The three amigos were nominally led by Energy Secretary Rick Perry, but it would be Ambassador Volker and Ambassador Sondland, presumably working with Ambassador Taylor, who would be the ones really doing the continual work here. In midsummer, Trump ordered a suspension of military aid to Ukraine, despite the fact that the aid had been authorized and appropriated by Congress and that the Defense Department, in consultation with the State Department, had certified Ukraine met all the necessary requirements to receive the aid, including anti-corruption reform. The aid was in the national interests of the United States and critical to Ukraine's security, a country that had been invaded by Russia. From her office in the Pentagon, Ms. Cooper oversaw a significant amount of security assistance flowing to Ukraine and was involved in efforts to understand and reverse the suspension of nearly $400 million in U.S. aid. Cooper, along with others, learned about the freeze during a series of interagency meetings in the last 2 weeks of July. At the first meeting on July 18th, an OMB representative relayed that, quote, the White House Chief of Staff has conveyed that the President has concerns about Ukraine and Ukraine's security assistance, unquote, and that a hold had been ordered by the President. No explanation was provided. All of the agencies responsible for Ukraine policy supported security assistance and advocated for lifting of the hold. The only dissenting voice was the Office of Management and Budget, which was following the orders of President Trump. And still, no good explanation of the hold was provided. While the aid suspension had not been made public, word was getting out. Catherine Croft, special advisor for Ukraine negotiation, who worked closely with Ambassador Volker and who testified before this committee at a deposition, received 2 separate calls in July or August from officials at the Ukrainian embassy who, quote, approached me quietly and in confidence to ask me about an OMB hold on Ukraine security assistance. Croft was, quote, very surprised at the effectiveness of my Ukrainian counterpart's diplomatic tradecraft as in to say they found out very early on, much earlier than I expected them to. The Ukrainians wanted answers, but Croft did not have a good response. But then, in late August, Cooper met with Kurt Volker, with whom she had met many times in the past. During that meeting, in which they were discussing the hold on security assistance, Volker revealed that he was engaged in an effort to have the government of Ukraine issue a statement that would, quote, commit to the prosecution of any individuals involved in election interference, unquote. Cooper understood that if Volker's effort were successful, the hold might be lifted. Unbeknownst to Cooper, no such statement was forthcoming, but the aid was abruptly restored on September 11th, days after the three committees launched an investigation into the Trump-Ukraine scheme. And with that, I now recognize the ranking member.
Thank you. As we Republicans have argued at these hearings, the American people are getting a skewed impression of these events. That's because the Democrats assumed full authority to call witnesses, and they promptly rejected any new witnesses the Republicans requested. So I'd like to take a moment to discuss a few of the people whose testimony has been deemed unacceptable for the American people to hear. The whistleblower. The whistleblower is the key figure who started this entire impeachment charade by submitting a complaint against President Trump that relied on second-hand and third-hand information and media reports. This began a bizarre series of events. Although the complaint had no intelligence component whatsoever, the Intelligence Community Inspector General accepted it and even changed the guidance on the complaint forms to eliminate the requirement for first-hand information. Then his office backdated the forms to make them appear as if they were published a month before. Democrats then took the extremely rare step of pushing a whistleblower complaint into the public, using it as the centerpiece of their impeachment crusade. We later learned that Democratic staff had prior coordination with the whistleblower, though the Democrats themselves had denied it on national television. Following that revelation, Democrats did a dramatic about-face. They suddenly dropped their insistence that the whistleblower testify to us and rejected our request to hear from him. Then, in a hearing yesterday, the Democrats cut off our questions and accused us of trying to out the whistleblower, even though they claim they don't even know who he is. Alexander Chalupa. Chalupa is a former operative for the Democratic National Committee who worked with officials of the Ukrainian embassy in Washington, D.C. in order to smear the Trump campaign in 2016. She met directly about these matters with then Ukrainian Ambassador Chalet, who himself wrote an article criticizing Trump during the 2016 campaign. Chalupa's activities were one of several indicators of Ukrainian election meddling in 2016, all of which were aimed at the Trump campaign. Once you understand that Ukrainian officials were cooperating directly with President Trump's political opponents to undermine his candidacy, it's easy to understand why the president would want to learn the full truth about these operations and why he would be skeptical of Ukraine. Hunter Biden. Biden is another witness who the Democrats are sparing from cross-examination. His securing of an extremely well-paying job on the board of a corrupt Ukrainian company, Burisma, highlights the precise corruption problem in Ukraine that concerned not only President Trump, but all of the witnesses we've interviewed so far. The Democrats have dismissed questions about Biden's role at Burisma as conspiracy theories. Yet they're trying to impeach President Trump for having expressed concerns about the company. If we could hear from Biden, we could ask him how he got his position, what did he do to earn his lavish salary, and what light could he shed on corruption at this notorious company. But Biden would make an inconvenient witness for the Democrats, and so they've blocked his testimony. At these hearings, we've heard a lot of second-hand, third-hand information and speculation about President Trump's intentions. But in the end, the only direct order we've heard from the president is his order to our last witness, Ambassador Sondland, that he wanted nothing from Ukraine. That is consistent with the testimony provided by Senator Johnson, who said that President Trump angrily denied accounts that a quid pro quo existed. Aside from rejecting our witnesses, the Democrats have tried other petty tricks to shape public opinion. Just this morning, they called a break in the hearing in order to press their absurd arguments to TV cameras. Then, for this hearing, they canceled the multiple rounds of initial questioning they had earlier today with Ambassador Sondland, and as they have had with all the previous witnesses, who they bizarrely consider as their star witnesses. When you look through the presumptions, assumptions, and smoke and mirrors, you see the facts of this case are clear. President Trump was skeptical of foreign aid generally, and especially skeptical of aid to corrupt countries like Ukraine. He wanted to discover the facts about Ukrainian meddling in the 2016 election against his campaign. A brief hold on Ukrainian aid was lifted without Ukraine taking any steps they were supposedly being bribed to do. President Zelensky repeatedly said there was nothing improper about President Trump's call with him, and he did not even know about the hold in aid at the time he was supposedly being extorted with it. So what exactly are the Democrats impeaching the president for? None of us here really know, because the accusations change by the hour. Once again, this is impeachment in search of a crime. So, Chairman, I would urge you to bring this to a close, to adjourn this hearing, and move on, and get back to the work of the Intelligence Committee. That, I yield back.